Hey, and welcome to the Resilient Lineage Podcast.
Special edition podcast. What's making it special, kiddo?
We're reflecting on my educational years.
That's right. So Olivia is about to graduate from high school, and so we're releasing this on a Thursday instead of a normal Tuesday, and we're going to spend some time kind of reflecting on the last 13 years of school. You've been in this season of wrapping up your senior year, and I threw some reflection questions your way for us to kind of walk through some stuff. Excited about it. You may be listening to this podcast because you subscribe, which is fantastic. Some of you may be listening to this because in Olivia's graduation announcement, we created a QR code that people could click on and then come to this podcast. So if that's you, thank you for being good friend.
Part of this.
Yeah, being good friends of ours. So we're super excited that you took the time to click that and hear what's going on. And I'm just going to dive in. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
I sent Olivia a handful of questions as to kind of reflect on what all of this is. And as we do that, we're going to kind of I hope this will inspire you. Like one of the things we want to do with our podcast is sort of model what an intergenerational conversation looks like between a parent and their kid on how to have some of these conversations. And we've had some people email us or message us and say that they listen to this podcast in the car with their kids on the way to school or, out running errands and things like that. And so hopefully these questions will help you. One of the things you can do is if you sign up for our newsletter, I'm just going to interject this real quick. You'll get access to a bunch of our show notes and stuff like that. And so all of these questions are going to be provided in our show notes, which will allow you, maybe these are questions you want to ask your kids, because they don't have to be asked when somebody's a senior about to graduate from high school. These are just maybe some good questions to ask every year at the end of the school year. I know, like one of the things that I always enjoy doing is like the last day of school. Sometimes we would pick you and your brother up and we take you out for a special lunch or dinner, or we do something special that day. And maybe that's your tradition. So if it is, these could be really good questions to ask during that time.
No, yeah, 100%.
And I would say I sent these questions to Olivia in advance, so you could think these through. So maybe that would be helpful, is to lay these out with your kiddos and ask them, hey, I'm gonna talk about these things, to reflect on the past, because a lot goes into being a student, and a lot goes into working and homework and papers and friendships and things you were hoping for that didn't happen, and things you didn't know were going to happen that happened that were good or maybe disappointing or whatever it is. Yeah. And so taking the time to reflect on all of those things, I think is really, really healthy. So with that in mind,
locked in.
Question number 1.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of span the full 13 years.
Okay.
But we could go down deep rabbit holes. I don't want to do that.
Gotcha.
So first question.
Yeah.
What is your happiest memory from school?
Okay. So there were, there's a lot. I mean, I feel like I have terrible days, but I have great moments. And so for those who don't know, I've been in 4 different schools over my 13 years. 1
in Oregon, 1 in North Carolina, 1 in Spain.
It was a middle and high school conjoined.
And here in Virginia.
Yeah. So I had a lot. Probably the one that I remember the most, the one that came to me instantly, was in primary school.
Okay.
Kindergarten. We lived on Salmon Lane.
Yes, we did.
And
in Wilsonville, Oregon.
Search that sucker up. But yeah, so I was in kindergarten and my brother was in 2nd grade, and we came home at different times. How the elementary school had it was that you could come from 8 to 12, I think, or maybe 9 to 11:30, and then there was 11:30 to 3.
There's a morning group of classes and an afternoon. Yeah.
So my class is kind of limited to the amount of people. Anyway, so there was about 5 of us on the school bus. My parents made me take the school bus, and it was intimidating at first, but I got to really know my bus driver It's the only bus driver like I know by name, Miss Yvonne. And she was literally my biggest cheerleader.
How so?
Oh, well, like, so first of all, I had this major crush on Cameron Winters. And hang on.
Okay.
And he also rode the bus with me. So I would make it a mission that I would sit next to him.
Ooh.
Most of the time he got up and like found his friends. I would just be left there. Anyway.
Rejected.
Yeah. But, young me, I was just like, you're my boyfriend in his eyes.
We sit on the bus together.
Yeah. So, yeah, I remember him going off the bus one day. He got dropped off at a daycare every single day. It was a big red barn daycare.
Okay.
That's all I remember. But I remember there was one day he walked off the bus and I opened my window. And I said, I love you, Cameron Winters.
Oh, my goodness.
And then Miss Yvonne in the front, like, starts screaming and, like, get it, Olivia. Like, this is great. And I was like, yes, Miss Yvonne.
Oh, my goodness.
I just declared my love.
Confession time
like,
with
the next
Olivia.
week, he broke up with me. And it was a mood. But I had Miss Yvonne. Anyway.
It feels good. That's a good thing. Like, somebody who celebrates you.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things you thought of when I said, what was your happiest memory from school was her celebrating you.
And so, also, I was always the last stop. We had dropped everyone off.
Yeah.
And so my mom would wait at the very, like, corner with my dog. And so she would let my dog come get me off the school bus. And I just remember that, like...
Because the dog would come on. Dobby was
Yeah.
our dog. She'd come onto the bus.
And then she'd hop on, like, all the seats. And then Miss Yvonne's like, yay! Anyway, so I love that. Like, I wrote down a whole bunch, but...
That's one of the biggest ones.
Cameron Winters and my dog Dobby, I don't
Nothing
think...
like your first love and your first dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. What were those first few days of school like? When you think back to, going to Boone's Ferry Primary School, is that what you thought of was when I asked that question, was elementary school, or did you jump to a different school?
I topped. I remember the worst day. And so that would have been in Spain.
Okay.
So for context, we lived in Oregon for 6 years, I believe. I was born in Indiana. We moved to Oregon. And then I got all the way up through my 4th grade year at Boone's Ferry Primary School, home of the Dragonflies.
That's right.
We're intimidating. Anyway, and then we moved to North Carolina. So that was a jump.
And in North Carolina, we homeschooled.
Yeah, because I didn't want to go into a new school.
Yeah, there was a variety of factors. One was we weren't sure where we were going to live, and we moved just as the school year was starting. And we felt, the conversation your mom and I had was we needed to figure out homeschooling because we didn't know where we would end up. We knew we were going to be in North Carolina for a relatively short period of time, which was less than 2 years. And so we thought, well, what would be a really good stabilizing experience? And
I remember like going to different schools to meet like the principal and stuff
in North Carolina. But
yeah,
we checked some stuff out.
I didn't
Yeah.
have that need.
We weren't feeling it.
Yeah. And so I was homeschooled. So then when we moved to Spain, like 18 months, 20 months later, it was like hopping into a new school.
Yeah.
And with that, a lot of changes happened. In primary school, you just have one room, and that's what you're used to. And then homeschool, like I just stayed in my room or in the living room. And then here, like you have a schedule, you have different blocks, you have to keep moving.
You're talking about the school in Rhoda.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we went to orientation. I knew where the different classes were, but I didn't know what my schedule looked like. So the very first day of school, I missed like a class or 2 classes.
Because you didn't know where to go.
Because I didn't know where to go. Or I went to the right class wrong bell.
Oh.
And the teacher didn't take attendance. So my very first day of school, I had the same class 2 times. And I just remember, like, that day, the second time I went in, like, she was like, are you okay? And I was like, no. I was like, I'm supposed to be in this block. And so it was a whirlwind.
Did you get, so thinking about Boone's Ferry and then, David Glasgow Farragut at middle high school in Rhoda, Spain, or DGF, as us insiders call it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you get that was the first day you were there. Everything was brand new. Because we moved there in August. Actually dropped you guys. You guys went to Spain without me.
Yeah.
Because I still had to finish up some things in the States. And so you guys are in the States or in Spain without me. Your mom is a rock star and navigating all those transitions. Obviously that lots of new experiences, not a great first day experience. But after that, were you nervous the first day of school? Because I know growing up, the first day of school was like I had butterflies in my stomach.
Lunch is always intimidating.
Lunch is intimidating. Are the friends I had last year going to be the friends I have this year? Yeah. There's a lot of those kind of pressures that come out. Did you have that?
After the very first day of middle school, at DGF middle, I was in 7th grade. So everyone kind of knew the rhythm of middle school already. And so,
or at least that's the perception.
That's what I got, because I had never done anything. Like I never had 7 classes every other day, like in total. But I remember coming home that day and looking at Mom straight in the face, and I was like, I'm being homeschooled again.
Yeah.
And she was like, you're not doing that. I'm like, you have no idea.
I remember that phone call because you guys were ahead of me by 6 hours living in North Carolina, and you were a mess on the phone. Like, and to be honest with you, as a parent, like you don't like to see your kids emotionally upset and distraught and uncomfortable and disoriented and, this is horrible and this is awful and I don't have any friends. And
yeah.
How long did that last?
Probably 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean,
because then I got classes changed. Because the class that I missed, I went to English 2 times that day, but the block that I missed was my advanced math class.
Oh, okay.
And so the next day I went and I felt so behind because I wasn't there like the first day. So then I felt like, and then everyone's like, who's that? Or who got into this class? And
yeah.
Or then I switched math teachers and then I switched science teachers.
I think, and I think that's a good, was that your computer or mine?
Not mine. Oh. I literally just hit my mic and it did that.
It did that sound. Okay. I think that's one of the things to remember, but particularly so that feeling lasted 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then, I was gone. I was still in the States for like a month. So by the time I got to Spain, you and your brother had started to find friends. You were figuring things out. You had kind of that worst of it was sort of behind you.
Yeah.
And then you were plugged in and had all your...
And then I had friends.
You started making girlfriends and gals you could trust and all that kind of stuff.
It was great.
Yeah.
So it's always rough in the beginning.
So and that's an interesting thing because I think one of the values of a conversation like this is because there's a chance you may feel that when you go to college.
And then I'll just come right home. I'll be like, I need to be homeschooled again.
I'm going to do online classes.
I'm going to graduate on this couch.
Well, and I think that's the value because sometimes we can leave a situation, and if it was good or we were comfortable or we had lots of friends and stuff like that, we can leave with that as which is good, but we leave with that as the way we define that experience, which it may for the most part, but there can be those rough patches at the beginning that are good to remind ourselves of like, hey, anytime you step into something new, it may be a rough start. Okay. So does that cover that question? Yeah. Okay. Third question. What have you learned about going to school? Because do you understand even where I was thinking, should I explain that question?
The value of going?
Yeah, because
I've learned a lot of things. Because I had to reread it 5 times. It's about going to school, not what have you learned in school.
Exactly. Let me kind of put...
No, you're good.
Because going to school, that's its own experience. And then going to church, that's its own experience. Or going on, joining a sports team, that's its own experience. Or, you know what I mean? There's these kind of places we go where there's a collection of people with a set of objectives that you enter into that you kind of have to learn, how do I step into those environments? How do I step into those communities of people that have, from, at least from the vantage point we may carry, everybody else seems to know what's going on. I might be new to all of this, or it might be unfamiliar to me. So, with that in mind, is that kind of how you read that?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, then, so what have you learned about going to school?
So there was a quote I heard, I don't know who by, or if someone said it. I think it was maybe like in youth group sometime years ago. And it was like, no one is picked at random in your life. And so it's kind of like, I feel like you can kind of view it like these are just random people. I don't really have to talk to them. They're fine. I'm fine. I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
But
that's easy.
Yeah. And that's comfortable. And you kind of, that's when you get lazy and unproductive and your moments go by. And so I would say, like, you have to make the most about school, like in school, and also like outside of school. Like, you have to make the most of every moment you have. The way you said that reminded me when I went to the chapel in Spain. So I led the quote unquote Protestant service, which is, there was 2 services. Yeah. Well, there's 3. There was a Catholic service, a Protestant service, and then a Jewish service. And so the Protestant service, it's everybody from Presbyterians, maybe folks that were used to high church, Lutherans or Methodists or things like that, where there's a liturgy and there's you do this here and you do that, that kind of experience. And then in the room you have people that are Pentecostals, and they're used to free form and like let the Spirit move, and we'll just kind of like, and so all those people kind of come together. And I remember I've never been a minister in that setting where there was such diversity of backgrounds, and we were one of 4 English-speaking church services in that area, like within a 50-mile radius. And so there's a limited amount of options, and so that was one of the 4 options, right? Yeah. Well, in that context, one of the, like, hit me one Sunday, and I think it actually hit me while I was preaching. I don't remember what the sermon was, but it hit me that for whatever reason, God has seen fit that this distinct group of people be together in Spain. Like, we're not here by accident. Like, God saw fit for these believers to be here in Spain for a time such as this. And I think the interesting question is, why? Yeah. What is there to learn? What is there to discover? And, you just kind of very beautifully pointed that out, that is like, you can sit back and go, I don't want to ask that question because it might require something of me. Or if I do ask that question, now I have to lean forward and start to get to know these folks around me, which may be uncomfortable. Yeah. They might not be interested in answering that question. And so, there's some risk and vulnerability you practice in pushing into those. No, folks. Yeah, 100%. And, after I saw that, like, God has entrusted me with these people. And then...
Entrusted you in what way?
Like, like, not like... like, I'm an uber Christian. Like, I have to lead all of you to Christ. We're just going to turn this English class.
Aren't you glad I'm in your life?
Aren't you even glad I'm here? Like, it's a blessing. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So not that. Not that. But, there's people that are like lost sheep, and they need encouragement, and they need a friend, and they need people in their life that will help them, or like with their homework or with testing, or like just be a part of their life in some capacity. And so it's really easy to just be like, I don't have anything in common with you, even though we've had like one conversation. So I'm just not gonna invest. And that's an easy way to opt out. But, and I also think COVID had something to do with it. Like, as soon as COVID hit, you're just isolated, and then you're just used to being on your own, and you're on your phone, or you're listening to something, or just away from what's actually you're
escaping.
Yeah, from something. So it makes it harder for me to approach people. But, you know, when God reveals something with you, like to you, then you always remember it. So my junior year, you know, I probably saw 80 kids a day for over 100 days.
Because it's a small school.
Yeah. And so, like, what am I going to do with that moment?
Yeah.
Or even, like, every single day I had a class my junior year, like, they each had 20 kids in it. So, for a whole semester, I saw them every single day. Like, what am I going to do? And there's some classes that, you know, I just sat back and focused on my homework and then moved on.
Yeah, I'm going to do me. I'm going to do me really well. I'm
really well.
And in some ways, like, particularly if you already have some friends or you already have, like, you're plugged into the youth group and, you know, your girls' Bible study and things like that, that it would be very easy to kind of go, I got my people. I'm not here for more people. Mm-hmm. You know? And
then it's like, yeah. And then other people kind of see it. Because it's comfortable from your end. But then other people are kind of like, why are you so bubbly and such in like a little pod? That it just makes it more awkward for that person.
Makes what awkward? I don't know. I'm not
Well, I mean, I've been in even churches where people stay in pods.
And
they don't branch out. And I notice it, but maybe they don't notice it. Or they don't think they're leaving a message to me.
Yeah.
So.
And you don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Next question. What do you want most for your friends?
Okay. Cool.
This one has lots of notes.
Yeah. I, had to throw some scripture in there to make not that.
Did you feel a need to put a scripture with it?
No.
Okay.
Not really, but it's something that I learned this week. And yeah, so what do I want? What do you want most for your friends? For my friends, the majority of them are Christians. I can't say that about all of them, but I want them to do what God wants them to do. But with that said, one of the things that I have a hard time realizing is other people's spiritual gifts maybe aren't boldness. And I am quite bold sometimes. And it's hard when I've seen my friends from past years that don't have the same relationships as they did. And they wish they had their old friends back, or they wish life was better then.
Sure.
Life's terrible now. But I not to say that they're not bold, but a community is different. So I want my friends to be able to find people in their lives that's going to help mold them to be more like Christ. Because I feel like when you find that group, then it's harder to say, I wish I had them, my old friends, rather than these ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because, okay, so let me tell you what I'm hearing you say.
Okay.
That when you're stepping into a healthy community today, it makes it easier to appreciate the community you have today and not long for a community that was.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Dad. So
that's a really good thought. I mean, and I think, to be honest with you, sometimes you'll meet those people, kind of the, Uncle Ricos, right, of life.
Rico Suave.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with Uncle Rico, I'm referencing the Uncle in Napoleon Dynamite.
It's a classic movie.
Which, if you have not seen Napoleon Dynamite, stop this podcast right now.
We aren't hurt.
And go watch this movie.
Yes.
But in the movie, it's this guy who's longing for a time that is no longer exists and is no longer available to him. He can't, he longs to go back into that high school football game. Yeah.
Throw a football further than that mountain.
Yeah. But I've met a lot of people that are in that place, that they're in a season or in a set of circumstances where they can't imagine that life is going to ever be better than what it was.
Yeah. And so then if that's the way you think your life is right now, your optimism you're not going to be optimistic like about what's currently happening.
Sure. And I think too, you'll romanticize the past. You know, like it's a little bit of it's on topic. Just stick with me.
Okay.
So I was pastoring a church several years ago, and in that church, somebody's husband died unexpectedly, and which widowed a lady and her 2 little kids. Very close family friend of ours. The husband that passed away was a close friend of mine. So it impacted us significantly. And I, as a leader of that pastor, I had never experienced that before. I'd never really even been around that. I don't recall growing up in church where anybody lost their father or mother. So I hadn't been close to it. But my grandmother, so your great grandmother, your grandma's mother,
Yep.
Her husband died when they were like very young. Like my mom was 8 years old. The baby, my Uncle Jim, was 3 months old or something like that. So, and there's 5 kids total. And so it was a very tragic situation. So during that time when this friend of ours had passed away, I called my grandma and I said, how did the church serve you well during this time? And then what guidance do you have for me?
Yeah.
In supporting that? And my grandma, your great grandma, one of the things she said, and it's always stuck with me. She said, "Don't romanticize the past. Like this, whatever was true about this guy, make sure that's the truth, because the tendency over time is to make him into something that he actually wasn't, which could,
be both good and bad.
It could be good or bad, and I think." Sometimes when we look back, there can be this romanticizing of how good something was or how horrible something was. And neither one is an appropriate response because it's not getting an accurate vision of what it actually was, which then may, as you look at the opportunity you're stepping into today, if the past was nothing but, that was amazing, then this is only in contrast to that.
Yeah.
Versus letting this be its own thing, whatever the next thing is.
No, 100%. So I want my friends, to do what God wants them to do, but then find people that will make them stronger in their faith as their faith, or like, as a character builder, make you better.
Yeah.
Not worse.
Yeah.
I hope not worse. So the scripture I chose was Proverbs 27:17, and it says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Now, okay, I've heard of this verse before. I feel like it's a common proverb. In fact, like in DGF, my brother and his group started a Bible study called The Forge, and it was based on that scripture, like, through this Bible study, we're going to strengthen one another, like make each other sharper. And so I've always liked that verse, but last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, my youth group, my small group, my high school girl small group, we were talking about this verse as you're finding a community. And it's a study by Jenny Allen called Find Your People. She talks about this scripture. And so the process of sharpening something starts with intentionality. I want to sharpen you to make you better, not to call out something that's going to make me feel better, but you worse. Like, to sharpen someone starts like, I'm going to do this whole process so that you can cut through something or have a better purpose or do what you're designed to do, not just sit there. And so,
and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
It's also like receiving and going, I need to hear this, and I need you to walk with me as I go through this sharpening process. I have a tendency to kind of want to hear something and then go off on my own and work on it, right? Versus letting friends and mentors and folks that are coaching me or walking with me, pastoring me, walk with me through those changes.
Yeah, and I feel like when we hear that verse, we're like, oh, we should hold people accountable, which it's kind of what that is. But But that doesn't mean, oh, I need to call this out and then let's just let that be that.
Yeah. You're not sitting in the jury box being able to go shame, or bravo. Or
the Lord's pressed on my heart. And so,
I need to share something with
you. That I don't want this to hurt our friendship. But I'm glad you're pointing this out. But at the same time, what are you going to do to help that person?
Sure.
Because if you're offended, you know of a process you need to help them with.
Yeah.
And so with that said, I hope my friends come along people that will help strengthen them. Now, as I was thinking about that, in order to be sharpened, you need to rely on someone that's stronger or sharper than you are. Mm. Okay. Cause something duller than me isn't really going to sharpen me. Something stronger or has more weight or has more build will further my process or further my use.
Yeah, or it's designed to sharpen.
Yeah, or if I'm the stronger thing, sharpening it works both ways.
Sure.
Because sometimes you could be the thing being sharpened, or you're the thing you're sharpening someone else.
Yeah.
And so with that said, sharpening metal involves a stronger metal, and then it produces sparks, heat, pressure, and some kind of technique. None of that's comfortable. It's not like, we're just going to rub this gel right on you. It's going to be soothing. It's
it's not a massage.
Nah, bro.
This is not a day at the spa.
This is something that is it's a season or a chapter, or it's a process.
Or an intentional lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes this is regardless of the season. Whether it's a good season or a hard season or a dark season or a lonely season, it doesn't matter. You still have to be sharpened.
No one's sharp enough, It's not like no one else can sharpen me.
Yeah, or I'm going through a really good season right now. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I think I see people slip into that sometimes. They're like, I'm in a good place, so I really don't need to go to church, or I don't need to be in the Word, or mm-hmm. I'm fine, and it's not to say that they're not fine, and it's not to say that they're not in a good season, but that's not, you don't only sharpen things because life's miserable or hard or bad or there's something to be overcome. In some ways, you sharpen things in preparation for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's good. So in the study, the lady, gave that verse, but then she mentioned a passage in Acts chapter 2. Now, Acts chapter 2 talks about Pentecost. And while the body of Christ, or all Christians, or gathered together, and then the Holy Spirit comes down. And it's this very surreal moment. And then Peter's like, I'm going to address this to all of y'all, what's going on, and kind of give you a brief. Because, it was, angels were coming, tons of fire, and people are speaking in tongues. So it's this moment. And so Peter, says, when the people heard this after he briefed them, they were cut to the heart, and they were like, what should we do? And he said, you need to be baptized and this, that, and the other. Gave them the steps they need to do. Now, I liked it because it says when the people heard this, they were cut to the heart. If you're not sharp enough, you're not going to be able to cut anyone. Mm. Not in a realistic tense, but as a Christian, our purpose is to be reflections of God. And if you're not sharpening someone else, or if you're not being sharpened by anyone, it's going to have a lesser impact on actually touching someone at the heart. Well,
and to that point too, it's when something's sharp, it's more effective. If something's dull, it can create more mess. Mm-hmm. It can create more problems than it's actually solving. Because, depending on the nature of what the problem is, but because it hasn't been adequately prepared, I think sometimes, one of the things, particularly in a day and age when everybody can be heard, everybody thinks their voice matters, maybe more than it actually does. Mm-hmm. So we say things or tweet things or post things or whatever it is recklessly, that effectiveness dulls, and as a result, our words are not as clear or as sharp as they ought to be. That's a really good point, kid.
Yeah. So I just want my friends to either find the people that will sharpen them, or if God's equipped them to sharpen other people or step into that leadership role, or and be able to pierce the hearts of the community surrounding them.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
when was a moment you felt most proud?
Okay, two.
2 moments.
2 moments. Both were in DGF.
David Glasgow Farragut in high school, middle and high school.
Middle and high school. But I think one was I think both of them were in middle school. I felt the most proud. I feel like when you hit high school, you're just kind of like, I'm done. You don't get as much as recognition as like elementary schoolers. Like your creativity is through the roof.
Through the roof. We're going to post your colorings all over the wall.
You get to enter the fair. It's like high school's like not that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one of them, 8th grade, I had to do this class with my teacher was Miss Webb, and she was also our middle school counselor. We had limited teachers that year, and she taught like study prep or something like that. Like, what are the things you need to be doing before you hit high school, and what do the papers look like? Kind of like setting you up for success.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was one day she brought in Scrabble, and I don't consider myself to be great at Scrabble, but that day I was. And so I remember no one wanted to play with me just because like everyone had their friends and I was just kind of like there by myself. So my Miss Webb came over and she was like, "You want to play with me?" I was like, "Yeah, 100%. Let's do it." And I beat her. Yeah, she said, "No one has ever beaten me before." Well, this is also middle school, where she has, this immense vocabulary and I'm like throwing cat down or, yeah, like Jack in the Box, like just simple words. Anyway, I beat her. Felt like through the roof, right? Like I just beat my teacher at Scrabble. Anyway, fast forward 2 years later, I have a friend, her younger sister had that class. And that little sister came up to me like later that day and she was like, "I played Scrabble with Miss Webb, and she was just talking about you and how you were the only one that beat her at Scrabble." And in that moment, I'm like, my legacy still holds to this day.
Yeah.
But, but that's pride, not necessarily like I'm proud of myself. Okay. I mean, I am, but yeah. Anyway, so.
Well, there's an accomplishment with that, right? I mean, there was a challenge laid out in front of you, and it wasn't expected that you could overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
And you did.
I did.
That's great.
Yeah. Fun fact. Yeah, we can just move on to the next one.
Okay. So you're only sharing one story.
I mean, do you want me to share that one?
I don't know.
Okay. 7th grade. This was
middle school again.
Yes. I had a teacher. It was applied technology. Every person in middle school had to take this class. And it was like an engineering course. Not necessarily my go-to, I'd say. But it was more fun than I thought it was going to be. So it was kind of my teacher, Mr. I don't remember his name. Ramos. Yeah. Yes. He would give us like challenges, and then we had to think of a way to overcome it or find a solution to this problem. And you worked with different people every day to figure out solutions. And, he would say, with these 4 sheets of paper, make something that will hold these big textbooks. So you have to engineer something with these pieces of paper that could hold books. Now, there's people who got the 4 individual papers, folded it in half, and maybe curled it and then put tape on the outside. But as soon as you put one book, it just smashed. And then other people did it. Well, I got it and then divided each sheet into 6 sections and then rolled it super tightly and made these little
pillars.
Little pillars. And there was 15 of them. And so we stacked 13 books that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you only had to stack 4.
Yeah, we had a limit, and he just kept going over the limit because they were like, we should see how much it held. And no, nothing fell over. So we got like a gold star that day. And then the next day we had to do this Rubik's Cube. He had to solve it. Not a complex one. It was like a 2x2. So he gave us these different challenges. And I remember there was one day I was sitting in my study hall class. And my teacher got a phone call. And she said, Olivia, you need to run up to Mr. Ramos' class. And that man, like, I feel like he scared me. Like, I was intimidated by him. I remember one day I had to stay after school because I didn't get anything. And the person I was working with, like, didn't help me. And so I had to stay till, like, 30 minutes after school. And then I figured it out. And so I wanted to do my best in the class. So he had a 3D printer. And he had printed me a little trophy of a stormtrooper that said swagger at the bottom. I still have it. And
doing a dab, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I brought it home and you were like, that's so cool. And like he presented it to me like, you did a great job. You've been showing me like what you're capable of doing and you strive for excellence. You are building excellence. And
that's a great line.
It is. I wonder who made that. And he presented it to me and it's like this little trophy. And in that moment, I'm like, my work, it's an accomplishment again. Like my work paid off and
it's like a little trophy.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, and I think with both of those things that, here's people that you appreciate. Here's people that you admire. Mr. Ramos is a very smart individual. Miss Webb was great. She was active in the chapel, and I think, here's two people that recognized your accomplishment. And I think that's that's like a good takeaway for any of us, right? Like, what are the things that we're seeing other people accomplish that maybe we have impact or influence over that we can help, like just saying something or doing something or talking about them in a positive way. And it has these kind of, that was 6 years ago.
Yeah. And it's different when someone my age tells me that versus someone who has more experience tells. And I think leaves a greater impact.
That's great. That's good. That's a good word.
Yeah.
All right. Number 6. What is the nicest thing someone did for you?
Okay. I couldn't really think of one. So that's why it's empty.
Next question.
Well, I have an answer. I can think of something someone nice did. This was also 7th grade. 7th grade was the year, guys. And the class I missed, I went to English first block, and then I went somewhere second block, and then went back to English third block. And then had like applied tech fourth block. And so I didn't know how many minutes you had between bells, so I had to use the restroom. And then the bell rang, like the final bell rang, I was on the restroom. So then I'm intimidating because I don't know where to even go. So like I step out of the restroom, trying to find this classroom. And the teacher, the advanced math teacher that I didn't come to his class to, he was in the hall. And he was like, "Are you lost?" And I was like, "Yes, like I'm trying to find this class." And he was like, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "Oh, my name's Olivia Curtis." He looks at me, he's like, "Weren't you supposed to be in my class?" I was like, "Yes." "Are you Mr. Warren?" And he was like, "Yes." I was like, "Oh." Anyway, he showed me to my class and he was like, "Your teacher's great. You're going to have fun. I know some of the students in there. You're going to be awesome. I'll see you tomorrow morning in the morning." And I just remember that like I wouldn't have known where to go because he took me in a direction that was just like hidden from Olivia's point of view, her 4'3". And so, I mean, I just remember that being an act of courtesy, but that was the first thing that came to mind. Other than that, like, I remember a kid giving me an eraser, but like, nicest, that's one that I appreciated.
Yeah. And that's a big question, and I think that's probably one of those things too. I'm sure I could ask a lot of other questions, and all of a sudden we start going down a lot of rabbit holes really, really quick.
Yeah.
Because we've been very fortunate to have good families around us. You've been fortunate to make a lot of friends very quickly, and those be like good, valuable friendships. Okay, good. Last question. You ready? What is one thing you want your friends to remember about you?
I want my friends to know that I'm dependable. It's great. I saw this line and it's like, I don't know how other people view me. Maybe that aren't my friends. Like, I hope I'm seen as a good, friendly, kind, considerate person, but I could also be seen as someone who's super funny or not funny or dull or serious or maybe mean or discouraging. So there's this, but I want my friends to know that I'm dependable. That's a hard skill that it's really easy to say yes to a lot of things because saying no makes it hard, I think, and you kind of just want to make everyone happy. But I want my friends to know that I'm dependable. That, like, I can be trustworthy.
That's great. And I think everybody wants dependable friends, and I think there's to be dependable requires, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where maybe you've invited somebody into something and they haven't given you a hard yes or no because they're holding out for a better option. And I've probably done that too,
I feel like we all have.
Yeah. And I can, in some circumstances I can appreciate where that comes from. But part of being dependable to folks is if I've said I'll be at your thing, I'll be at your thing. I'll be by your side, even if something better comes along. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to bail on you just because, a shinier thing caught my attention and distracted me and pulled me away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if there's probably a missing trait that a lot of people can develop in their own lives, or that we want to see developed in our own, that we want in our lives, is that desire, like, here's the people in my corner that I know will, and that's probably on a spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. There's what dependability looks like for your innermost circle is one thing. And then, what does dependability look like when you're a student of a class, right?
Yeah.
The student that arrives on time and turns their work in on time and, doesn't create drama and doesn't make excuses and, all that kind of stuff. Like, that can be a really broad spectrum, but that quality, can be discovered across that spectrum.
Yeah. And then it just involves an immense amount of trust. And I feel like that's a really good quality to have.
Sure. Being trustworthy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's people in my life that I've ruined that at times. And it's hard to get past that.
Sure.
Because then it's like, I've apologized and I've, tried to show up for you more than once. But, I want people to know that I'm dependable.
Yeah. That's good.
So, yeah.
So there's some questions. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, if you want those questions, I think these are good questions to ask. Good questions to review. There's probably better questions out there as well, or some that we didn't cover. But I would encourage you to find time with those that you love. If you're going through a transition time or closing out a season, like, you're not just closing out a school year, you're closing out high school. You don't have to go to school anymore. Isn't that a crazy idea?
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? Do you want to tell people what your plans are? Where are you going?
I'm going to go to Regent University.
Fantastic.
It's in Virginia Beach, Virginia. It's a small Christian
liberal arts school.
Yeah.
What are you going to study?
Marketing.
An
intro to business and leadership.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think you'll have a good time.
I know. I can't wait to pick your brain.
All right. Well, kiddo, we're really proud of you.
Thanks, Dad.
And if you want to follow up with us on anything, if you want to shoot at congratulations to Olivia, you can email us, hello@thisresilientsoul.com. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm on Twitter.
Wait, is it called Twitter anymore?
I'm on X. I've been on that platform since like 2000, whenever. Facebook, Instagram. You can find us both in those platforms. So if you would like to reach out to us there, you can email us hello@thisresilient.com. Also, we're always looking for ways to improve it and deepen the quality and expand the impact of this podcast. So if you have some ideas on how to do that, we welcome that input. Most importantly, join us in congratulating Olivia on a job well done. I'm proud of you, kiddo.